Those past events are not worth mentioning. To save his first love's company, Damien sent me into the room of the client without caring at all that I was his fiancée. Serafina, our Damien family has taken care of you for so many years. It's time for you to repay us. Later, Damien stood at the entrance of the hotel waiting for me to resist desperately so that he could rescue me justifiably. However, he heard my voice full of pain. It hurts. Be gentle. That night, Damien, the usually calm and composed eldest son of the Damien family, picked up a chair and smashed the door crazily with his eyes red, begging his fiancée to come out. 01 When I took the documents for Damien to sign, he slowly said, "There's a party tonight. Come with me." After saying that, he looked me up and down and sneered. "Remember to change your clothes. We're going to a proper party, not for you to seduce anyone." I didn't understand. I was wearing an ordinary business suit. What was improper about it? But I still nodded obediently. I got it. After all, I was his secretary now. Who made me? Oh, the Damien family. I could only roll my eyes at him silently. In the evening, I tied up my long hair and changed into a red knee-length dress. The neckline that covered up to my collarbone still couldn't hide my proud figure, coupled with my bright and beautiful appearance. In the words of Damien's mother, this woman looks unruly at first sight. Because of their slander, I once doubted myself. In high school, I didn't dare to wear tight clothes and hunched my back afraid of being seen. When I went to college, I already had a 30-60 bust. With the encouragement of my roommates, I finally understood. Rules? What rules? My rules are the rules. No matter what figure a girl has, every girl has the right to show her own beauty. It's never us who should feel ashamed, but those who have dirty thoughts. When getting into the car, Damien's eyes fell on my slender neck and fair calves, and his gaze became a bit deeper. He looked at the time and finally didn't make any more trouble. He just asked me to let my hair down and then told the driver to drive. I was baffled by what he said, but I still let my hair down. Fortunately, when we arrived at the entrance of the club, Damien didn't have the mind to care about me anymore because Ariadne had also arrived. 02 Ariadne was Damien's college classmate and also his first love. They were the campus heartthrob and the campus belle respectively, and there were many rumors about them in school. Many people said that if it weren't for me, his fiancée, they would have been together long ago. Today, Ariadne was wearing a white long dress, and she looked gentle and graceful. She was the type of noble lady that Damien liked the most. Seeing me, Ariadne quietly looked me up and down and smiled gently. "This is Sister Serafina, right?" Sure enough, as famous as expected. I smiled back but didn't respond. As famous as expected. No matter what was spread, it definitely wouldn't be anything good about me. In the private room, everyone had arrived except the three of us. As soon as we entered the door, I met the eyes of the man sitting in the middle. He was Cashin, the president of the Cashin family group and the protagonist of tonight. Ariadne's family's company was on the verge of bankruptcy, and only Cashin's company could save it, so there was this party. The man's eyes were like those of a wild beast. Once locked on, it seemed that one could never escape. I subconsciously avoided his gaze and didn't dare to look him in the eye. There were only 3 seats left. One was next to Cashin, and the other 2 were on the other side. Naturally, Damien sat with Ariadne. I could only sit beside Cashin. As soon as I sat down, I heard whispers around me. "This is Damien's fiancée?" I didn't expect her to be so beautiful. Look at her figure. I think she's even more beautiful than Ariadne. She's been in the Damien family for over 10 years. How could she not be good-looking? If Damien really doesn't like her, I can help him get rid of this trouble. Before long, several men came to toast me. I could only brace myself and drink. Fortunately, I had practiced some drinking capacity when I went out for socializing with Damien before. I had already tried my best to avoid touching Cashin beside me. However, my calves and arms would still rub against him from time to time. He was slightly stunned by my words, as if he didn't know what I was talking about or as if he had an auditory hallucination. I smiled at him and said, "Then let's verify it, Hunter." Do you want to? 03 I didn't know what I had done wrong again. Just when he was about to lose his temper, Ariadne held his hand, their eyes met, and Damien's gaze gradually softened. Ariadne smiled gently. Basically, everyone here is an alumnus, or graduated from overseas Ivy League universities. I don't know which university Sister Serafina graduated from. Suddenly, the focus of the whole venue fell on me. After hesitating for a moment, I said the name of my university. It was just an ordinary first-tier university. Not to mention a famous school, maybe many people hadn't even heard of it. Ariadne looked surprised. I'm sorry, Sister Serafina. I thought you graduated from a famous school like us. But it doesn't matter. With your educational background, it's already amazing that you can be Damien's secretary. Because of Ariadne's few words, many of the men who had surrounded me just now disappeared in an instant. What's the use of just having a good appearance? She has neither a good family background nor a high educational attainment. She's far worse than Ariadne. What school did she say she was from just now? I've never heard of it. Is it a diploma mill? No wonder Damien doesn't like her. It's okay to play with her, but it would be embarrassing if she was really taken home and people asked about it. They thought they were speaking quietly, but actually everyone present could hear them. Perhaps they didn't care if they were heard. I caught a glimpse of Ariadne's smug smile from the corner of my eye. I was just about to speak. The man who had been sitting beside me and hadn't said a word suddenly chuckled. 04 Everyone fell silent instantly. Cashin slightly raised his eyebrows and played with a golden embossed lighter with his slender fingers. He looked at Ariadne and said in a casual tone, since a famous school represents ability, then what is Miss Ariadne doing here today? With just one sentence, Ariadne's face turned from smug to pale in an instant. She stammered and couldn't say a word. So a famous school is just like this. With a snap, Cashin threw the lighter on the table. Ariadne's eyes immediately turned red. She came here to beg for help today, but she didn't expect to be humiliated like this. I couldn't hold back my smile at the side. In my heart, I had already given Cashin 100 likes. The brother, keep talking if you can. I looked up and saw Damien's expression. He saw that I was trying hard not to laugh, and his face became even uglier. All right, we have something to talk about. You go back to the car and wait for me first. He said this to me. As a secretary, of course I had to listen to my boss. I got up to leave suddenly. Cashin put his suit jacket on me. It's cold outside. Don't catch a cold. I stared at him blankly, then looked at Damien. Damien's eyes became darker, but in the end, he didn't say anything. I walked out wearing Cashin's jacket. Halfway there, I realized that I hadn't taken my bag. So I turned back. Through the half-closed door, I heard Damien's voice. Since President Cashin knows our purpose, I won't beat around the bush. Please do help the Ariadne family. Cashin ignored the wine glass raised by Damien and said faintly, I can give the Ariadne family a hand, but there's one condition. As long as President Ariadne is willing to help, I'll agree to any condition. Let your secretary accompany me for one night. 05 My action of pushing the door paused, and I looked at Cashin inside in shock. Damien's smile disappeared instantly, and he seemed about to lose his temper. Ariadne beside him quickly tugged at the hem of his clothes, looking at him with pleading eyes. Damien took a deep breath and forced a smile. President Cashin really loves joking. With your strength, you can find any woman you want, right? Serafina is nothing special. If you want women, I promise to find you several better ones to make President Cashin happy. I want her. Cashin interrupted Damien's words, with an unyielding tone, blocking Damien's way completely. May I ask what President Cashin wants Serafina to do? Hearing this, Cashin laughed and said, chat. Do you believe it? 06 When Damien told me in the parking lot, I didn't expect that for the sake of Ariadne, he could go to such lengths. Damien guiltily turned his face away and didn't dare to look at me. Serafina, our Damien family has taken care of you for so many years. It's time for you to repay us. Yes, I owe the Damien family too much. When I was 10 years old, my parents died in a car accident. It was Damien's father who took me into the Damien family, and I became Damien's fiancé. Damien hated the arranged fate and also hated me along with it, but these weren't things that I could choose. Damien was about to say something else, but I said directly, if I go, will I have paid off what I owe you? Seeing that I agreed so easily, Damien's face was tinged with anger. He said angrily, yes. As long as you accompany Cashin for one night, we'll be even. I didn't hear the sarcastic words that Damien said later. There were only the 4 words, be even, in my mind. In this way, I would be free. Okay, I agree. Damien's face looked even uglier, and he was about to say something when his mobile phone received a text message. It was the address sent by Cashin. Arrive at this hotel within half an hour. 1 second late and all the promises will be invalid. Damien didn't hesitate anymore and immediately drove to the hotel. When we arrived at the hotel parking lot, there were only 3 minutes left. Is there something you want to say? I asked. After a while, Sean finally spoke. Actually, my knee was bleeding instantly. Even so, Damien didn't stop. He managed to send me into Cashin's room at the last moment. There was no one in the room. The sound of water came from the bathroom. He should be taking a shower. I walked inside and looked at the night view outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. I had mixed feelings in my heart, thinking of how Cashin had defended me in the private room. I believed that he wasn't a bad person. Suddenly, the bathroom door opened and the man walked out. There was only a towel around his waist and his upper body was bare. He had broad shoulders and a narrow waist, forming a perfect inverted triangle. The 8-pack abs on his abdomen rose and fell powerfully with his breathing, full of wildness and impossible to ignore. Well, this seemed not bad. I unconsciously swallowed. Cashin also saw me and walked towards me. I'm 1.7 meters tall, and few men can make me feel oppressed. However, when Cashin approached, it seemed that I was completely enveloped by him and even the light seemed to dim. Lift it up, Cashin said. What? The man's big hand grasped my waist and with a gentle pull, I bumped into his bare chest and felt his heat. His warm breath sprayed on my ear. The dress, lifted up. My pupils shrank. No, was he going to be so wild right from the start? 08 Damien didn't leave immediately after sending Serafina into the room. He just stood at the door, waiting for Serafina to call for help. In his opinion, Serafina was his fiancée and had liked him since childhood. She would definitely resist desperately later. At that time, he would rush in to save her. Even if Cashin was powerful, he couldn't force a woman to do something, right? In the end, it could only prove that Cashin wasn't charming enough to conquer a woman, and Damien also fulfilled his request. For the sake of his reputation, Cashin would definitely help the Ariadne family. Damien bit his cigarette and showed a smug smile for his perfect plan. He took out his mobile phone and dialed Cashin's number. President Cashin, how is it? Serafina has been sent to your room. If she doesn't cooperate, I can help you change. It hurts. Be gentle. Damien's words were interrupted by the woman's soft and delicate voice. His body stiffened and the cigarette in his mouth fell to the ground without him realizing it. No need. She's quite obedient. Busy. Got to go. By the time the beep beep sound came from the other end of the phone, Damien still hadn't come to his senses. 09 At this time, I had lifted my dress, revealing my fair skin, and Cashin was looking straight ahead, concentrating on applying medicine to me. Only when I made a sound of pain would his movements pause and his ears turn slightly red. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door, which got louder and louder. Later, it seemed to turn into pounding on the door. The sound insulation of the hotel was good, but I could still vaguely hear Damien's shouts. What's going on outside? I just stood up when Cashin pulled me back and made me sit on the bed again. The heat of his words sprayed on my leg, making it itchy. Nothing. The security guards will handle it. Sure enough, the sound stopped after a while. I've finished applying medicine for you. It's your turn to apply medicine for me. Are you also injured? Cashin handed me a cotton swab and pulled my hand to place it on his abs. I took a closer look. It was a very small wound, probably scratched by a cat that it would have healed soon if not treated with medicine. Cashin leaned back to let me see more clearly. Actually, the six-pack abs were neatly arranged and could be seen clearly without doing this. I dipped the cotton swab in the ointment and gently wiped the wound. Subconsciously, I blew on it and felt the man's breath hitch. Okay, I was a bit reckless. Did you take a breath? I asked. Cashin said stubbornly, no. All right, a typical stubborn Chinese man. However, the effect of tightening his abdomen was different. His abs became even more obvious. It's hardened. Cashin's body stiffened. What? I said your abs have hardened. Cashin seemed to breathe a sigh of relief and coughed unnaturally a few times. Oh. 10 after applying the medicine, Cashin said, do you know what you're here for tonight? I nodded, yes. Cashin chuckled, then how dare you come? Why wouldn't I dare? I gently stroked Cashin's abs with the cotton swab. You have a nice figure. I guess your skills shouldn't be bad either. Cashin didn't stop my movements and his eyes darkened slightly. Serafina, don't play with fire. I smiled and moved closer. I understand. It's the typical CEO's line. Isn't the next line, I started the fire, so I'll be responsible for putting it out? Cashin looked at me with a complicated look in his eyes, as if he was looking at an idiot. Finally, he sighed softly, put his palm on my head and pushed me away a little, then stood up and walked to the sofa. Don't worry. I'm not in the habit of taking advantage of others' difficulties. You can sleep peacefully tonight. I looked at Cashin in astonishment. Had this man quit drugs or something? I had already said so much, yet he could still walk away? Normally, shouldn't he have pushed me down and then done this and that? Cashin threw a piece of clothing onto my head, blocking the dirty thoughts in my mind. Go to sleep. I lay on the bed and couldn't help reminding him, before going to sleep, I suggest you take a cold shower in the bathroom again. Cashin's movement of turning over obviously paused. No, did he really think that a towel could hide anything? In the end, Cashin still went to the bathroom. This time, he took an especially long time. When he came out, he had put on a pair of home pants. I was already feeling sleepy. In a daze, I felt someone gently stroking my hair. Then a kiss fell on my forehead. The next morning, as soon as I opened my eyes, I saw Cashin putting on clothes with his back to me. The man skillfully put on his shirt and buttoned it up to the top. Even though I couldn't see anything, the image of his hot figure that could make one's nose bleed still clearly came to my mind. I couldn't help patting my head. Wake up, girl. Cashin heard the noise and turned around. Did I wake you up? The breakfast will be sent up by the waiter. I have something to do at the company and can't have breakfast with you. Remember to take care of what you should do when you go back. I hadn't fully woken up yet. What's that? Cashin's eyes became gloomy. He bent down and moved closer. Of course, it's to break off the engagement and leave the Damien family. If you can't do it, I don't mind doing it for you. I said, that's not necessary. 12 after Cashin left, I slowly finished my breakfast. As soon as I walked out of the hotel, I saw Damien standing at the entrance. His eyes were bloodshot and there were cigarette butts all over the ground under his feet. He must have been waiting here all night. After Cashin ordered that he wasn't allowed to enter the hotel, he could only wait outside. Did you really sleep with Cashin? Damien's tone was extremely cold, but I could hear his voice trembling. Isn't this what you wanted? I didn't understand. It was he who sent me into Cashin's room. What right did he have to question me now? I turned around to leave, but Damien grabbed me and pulled me back. The veins on his hands were bulging. I was setting a trap for Cashin. Who allowed you to really do it with him? Yesterday, I smashed the door with a chair and shouted your name. Didn't you hear me? Why didn't you come out? Damien's roar was met with my cold laugh. Damien, don't you think you're ridiculous? You said I owed the Damien family and asked me to pay it off. Didn't you already know what would happen when I went in? What are you pretending now? Or do you think that as a woman, I could resist a grown man? Damien's expression froze because what I said was the truth and he couldn't say anything to refute it. The anger in his eyes turned into remorse. Damien raised his hand and wiped his face. Serafina, forget about this. Pretend it never happened and don't tell anyone. After a while, I'll marry Ariadne, but I'll also take care of you and make sure you have no worries about food and clothing. As long as you stay by my side and listen to me, I can let bygones be bygones and won't treat you badly in the future. Damien reached out to pull me, but I dodged. I couldn't believe what I heard. Was this something a human being would say? Damien, do you want me to be your mistress? 13 Damien saw my disdain and said matter-of-factly, otherwise? In your current situation, who else would want you except me? Do you think you still have any capital to bargain with me? So, in his mind, a woman's capital was her chastity? Before, I thought he was just childish and afraid to challenge his father's authority, so he chose to endure. Now I realized that he was completely selfish and looked down on women from the bottom of his heart. Why did he think that Ariadne and I would be willing to be his appendages? You're dreaming. A look of panic flashed in Damien's eyes, and then he reacted. Don't you think that just because you slept with Cashin, he'll marry you? Stop daydreaming. The story of the Prince Charming falling in love with Cinderella only exists in fairy tales. In reality, they calculate more carefully than you. Or do you prefer to be Cashin's mistress? Is his skill so good that you can't tear yourself away? I slapped Damien hard on the face, leaving a big palm print. I looked at him coldly. Keep your mouth clean. If not, I can give you another slap. Damien, you overestimate yourself and underestimate me. This kind of thing is nothing to you men, and it's also nothing to us women. Or, using chastity to define a woman's value, that's your mindset. Damien turned his head, wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and said with disdain, then what can you do now? I want to break off the engagement and leave the Damien family. 14 When I said this in the living room of the Damien family, everyone stopped what they were doing and looked at me. The first one to react was Damien's mother. Her eyes were full of joy. She had never liked me. It was only because of Damien's father that she had endured it all this time. Now that I took the initiative to say it, she was naturally happy. In fact, I had wanted to propose breaking off the engagement several times before, but Damien had always stopped me. He would always warn me viciously that only he could break off the engagement. I had received so many favors from the Damien family and had no right to mention it. Now I could finally say it. And Damien also didn't say anything unusually. He just looked at me coldly. Damien's sister Astra laughed out loud. Damien said impatiently, what are you laughing at? Nothing. I just think someone is asking for trouble. Damien's face became even uglier. Damien's father sighed as if he had known that this day would come. He called me to the study and asked me the reason. I didn't say anything. With Damien's father's ability, if he wanted to look into it, he would find out soon. Looking at the old man's lonely expression, I knew that he truly cared about me and had always treated me like his own daughter. I smiled and held his hand, indicating that even if I left the Damien family, I would still come back to visit him often. Damien's father smiled, touched my head, and finally agreed. After all, that boy doesn't have the good fortune. Back in my room, I started packing my things. I had lived in the Damien family for over 10 years, but there were very few things that I could take away. One suitcase was enough. When I came out with the suitcase, I saw Damien standing at the door. As I passed by, he grabbed the handle of my suitcase. Is it necessary to leave so quickly? I smiled and said, I can't wait to leave you even faster. 15 Damien looked hurt in his eyes, but his words were still tough. Serafina, if you leave now, I won't take you back even if you want to in the future. Don't regret it. Don't worry. There won't be such a day. On that same day, I went to the company to resign. Damien approved it directly and asked me to leave immediately without even needing to hand over my work. It was straightforward, just what I wanted. When my best friend Skylar learned that I had left the Damien family, she clapped her hands and cheered. You should have left long ago. Who does that Damien think he is? He even wanted to have his cake and eat it too. If I were there, I would definitely punch him a few times to let him know that my years of boxing practice weren't for nothing. I was packing things in my new rented apartment. Watching Skylar excitedly waving her fists in the video, I couldn't help laughing. Alright, stop showing off. Skylar stopped. No way. Since you started working, you've been so busy. We haven't seen each other for so long. Your time tonight belongs to me. We need to celebrate properly. And Skylar's way of celebrating was to take me to a private room and then order 10 male models with excellent figures. 16. I pulled Skylar's hand. Isn't this inappropriate? Skylar was stunned. Inappropriate? What's inappropriate? We can change. Alright, that's a real best friend, replying randomly after reading the message. Originally feeling a bit reserved, I drank a few glasses of wine under Skylar's encouragement and started to let loose. I put my arm around Skylar's shoulder and sang The Hottest Ethnic Trend and The Love of the Trackers. After singing, my mouth was dry. I naturally took the wine handed over by the male model and found that this young man was really good looking. Just as our faces were about to touch, with a bang, the door of the private room was kicked open forcefully. Cashin walked in with a cold expression. When he looked at me, his eyes were even colder, staring at me fixedly. Before I could react, I was grabbed by Cashin and pulled up. I tried to break free. In the next second, Cashin carried me on his shoulder and walked straight out of the private room. Only his assistant was left to explain to Skylar. In the corner, Cashin pinned me against the wall, with the veins on his hands protruding. The man was suppressing his anger. Serafina, you're really something. You just broke off the engagement this morning, and now you're ordering male models in the private room. At this time, I was drunk and my eyes were hazy. Looking at Cashin's mouth opening and closing, it seemed especially soft. Cashin's tone carried a sense of grievance. So are you short of men? Can you be so intimate with them? Since they're all okay, why can't I? Before Cashin could finish speaking, I reached out and pulled his tie, then tilted my head up and kissed his lips. Sure enough, they were very soft. You can. I've never said you can't. The distance between us was instantly narrowed, and I could hear Cashin's panting in my ear. I unbuttoned Cashin's shirt and let my hand slide from his Adam's apple, slowly down to his pectoral muscles, and then to his abs. Soon, I was caught by Cashin. The man's eyes were filled with desire. Serafina, do you know what you're doing? My eyes were still fixed on his lips. I want to kiss you again. Is it okay? I moved my face closer again, but just before our lips touched, Cashin covered my mouth with his hand. The man dropped the pretense. Let's go home. You can kiss me as much as you want there. 17. At the entrance, Cashin pinned me against the door and kissed me deeply, without any restraint, taking what he wanted recklessly. This man, how long had he been holding back? He couldn't even wait to get back to the room. I was so kissed that my legs felt weak and I could hardly breathe. Then he carried me to the sofa. He took my hand and placed it on his abs, his voice hoarse. Now you can touch as you like. That night, what should have happened and what shouldn't have happened all happened. It also made me understand that for some men, the fire they lit wasn't so easy to put out. 18. The next day, I woke up in bed, feeling sore all over my body. Cashin's big arm was wrapped around my waist. He was hugging me from behind and still sleeping. From time to time, he rubbed his face against my neck and murmured a few words. He was so cute in a way that he wasn't when he was awake. I gently got out of bed and went to take a bath in the bathroom. When I came out after the bath, I saw Cashin sitting on the bed with a remorseful look on his face. If it weren't for how enthusiastic he was last night, I would have suspected that I was the one who forced him. Seeing me, the remorse in Cashin's eyes reached its peak, and he even raised his hand and slapped himself. What are you doing? I grabbed Cashin's hand. I'm sorry. I took advantage of you last night. I knew you were drunk, but I still indulged myself and sank into it. You can punish me however you want. No, it was clearly me who deliberately seduced him, and he gave in reluctantly. Why was he blaming everything on himself now? Call the police and let me be punished by the law. I definitely won't run away. I sighed. I had seen people shirking responsibility, but I had never seen someone who insisted on taking the blame on themselves. I lifted the man's face and gently pecked his lips. Cashin, I'm an adult. If I were really drunk, I wouldn't be able to take the initiative. Looking at Cashin's stunned expression, I sat on his lap and kissed him again. So, Cashin, would you like to be my boyfriend? The man's face turned slightly red, and he gently pursed his lips. Kiss me again, and I'll tell you. I hooked my arm around his neck and leaned in to kiss him. In the next second, the back of my head was pressed by a big hand. Cashin took the initiative and forcefully deepened the kiss. Everything fell into place naturally. Later, I learned that because of his sense of guilt, Cashin had been quite polite to me last night. 19 A month later, I rented a storefront and was preparing to open a dessert shop. Skylar looked puzzled. You were the top graduate in the finance major of our school. What's the point of opening a dessert shop? I smiled and looked at her. Does it have to have a point? Can't it be just because I like it? It seems that we've always lived under the eyes of others, and we always have to give different meanings to everything we do. Little did we know that I like it itself is the greatest meaning. Pleasing ourselves is more important than pleasing others. During the time when I was taking care of the storefront, Damien and Ariadne officially announced their engagement. My WeChat moments were flooded with blessings for them. Ariadne's WeChat moments caption was, "After going through so many twists and turns, you're finally mine." This twist and turn undoubtedly referred to me. Skylar couldn't stand it and commented below, yes, he's yours. Wish you two stay together forever and don't come out to harm others anymore. Soon, this comment was deleted by Ariadne. Damien didn't post anything on his side. I heard from friends that Ariadne had asked Damien several times, but Damien didn't agree to post on WeChat moments. The two had a quarrel because of this. Life went on smoothly like this. After my dessert shop opened, there were often stray dogs and cats coming to enjoy the air conditioning. I couldn't bear to drive them away, so I took them all in, bathed them regularly, disinfected them, and dewormed them. Many customers would squat down and play with them when they came to buy things. Gradually, more and more people took pictures and posted them online, and my dessert shop became an internet-famous store in the neighborhood. Today, as usual, I was arranging the cakes in the display cabinet when I suddenly heard a familiar voice. Is it necessary to come so far to buy cakes? The cakes in this shop are very popular recently. You haven't accompanied me for so long. Now that you finally have time, can't you accompany me? It was actually Damien and Ariadne. 20 They were also stunned for a moment when they saw me. Especially Damien. Since he entered the door, he had been frowning tightly, staring at me fixedly. He didn't even reply when Ariadne asked him which flavor he liked. Serafina, is this what you've become after leaving me? You're actually selling cakes now? I glanced at Ariadne and saw that she was glaring at me viciously. Am I also part of your game? What a crazy couple. What's the problem? I'm making much more money now than when I was your secretary. Damien frowned even deeper, and there seemed to be a hint of heartache in his eyes. It must be hard, right? If you want to come back, it's not impossible. I interrupted directly. Compared to you relying on your family in your own company, it's indeed harder. Damien's face immediately darkened. Since I decided to leave the Damien family, I hadn't been polite when talking to him. I just did whatever made me feel good. The atmosphere suddenly became tense. Ariadne smiled and broke the deadlock. It's so hard. Let me introduce a boyfriend to Sister Serafina to help you. I didn't even look up. No need. I already have a boyfriend. Usually, Cashin would come to the dessert shop to help me and pick me up from work when he was free. It's just that he happened to be on a business trip abroad these days and didn't come. Damien looked at me with suspicion in his eyes when he heard that I had a boyfriend. Ariadne was quite happy. She bought 2 cakes and left. Finally, these 2 people were sent away. I just hoped that they would never come again. 21 In the evening, I locked the door of the shop and was ready to go home after work. Turning around, I saw Damien's Maybach parked right across from me, and he was leaning against the car, smoking with his head down. Seeing me come out, he walked straight over. Didn't you say you have a boyfriend? Why isn't he coming to pick you up so late? I didn't respond and walked past him. Behind me was Damien's smug voice. Serafina, you're jealous, right? Because I'm with Ariadne, you're jealous. You don't even have a boyfriend, but you made one up to annoy me, trying to arouse my competitive spirit? I turned around and looked at him with a puzzled expression. Damien, when I still treated you like a human being, please say something decent. If you're sick, go to a mental hospital. Don't come here to act crazy. I find it unlucky. In Damien's stunned expression, I turned around and left. I didn't pay attention to his shouting behind me anymore. On the day Cashin came back, I went to the airport early to pick him up. His usually cold face immediately broke into a happy smile when he saw me. He quickly hugged me into his arms, buried his head in my neck, and greedily inhaled my scent. In public, I felt a bit shy and tried to push him away, but Cashin hugged me even tighter. Several of Cashin's colleagues beside us jokingly pretended to cover their eyes with their hands. Ugh, it's really the sour smell of love. Was this still President Cashin, whom we had complained about being old-fashioned a few months ago? Sure enough, there are no old-fashioned men. As long as they meet someone they like, they'll know what to do without being taught. My face turned even redder because of what they said. However, Cashin didn't care at all. After generously introducing me to them, he directly dismissed everyone on the spot and gave them 2 days off. Ignoring their surprised looks, he pulled me away. Cashin used to be a complete workaholic. It was impossible for him to take a holiday after a business trip before. When we got home, Cashin immediately showed me the gifts he had brought back. There was a whole suitcase full of them. I wondered why there was only 1 suitcase when he went abroad but 2 when he came back. Cashin's ears turned slightly red. When I was abroad, whenever I saw something that I thought was suitable for you and that you might like, I wanted to buy it for you. Sure enough, for the person who loves you, even if there are mountains and seas between you, you will always be on their mind. Knowing that Cashin needed to adjust to the time difference and must be very tired, I asked him to take a bath first while I helped him unpack. I was halfway through unpacking when my cell phone rang. Looking at the caller ID, it was actually Damien. 23, why didn't you open the shop today? Do you know how long I've been waiting? Before I could say anything, he started questioning me loudly on the other end of the phone. Is there anything wrong? The other end was silent for a moment and then coughed a few times. Nothing much. It's just that Ariadne wants to eat the cakes from your shop and asked me to come and buy them. My boyfriend came back today. I need to accompany him. I probably won't open the shop for the next 2 days. There was a light snort from Damien on the other end of the phone. Serafina, if you want to lie to me, you should change your excuse. Do you think I'll really believe you? Just as he finished speaking, Cashin's voice came from the bathroom. Serafina, I forgot to take my clothes when I took a bath. Could you bring them for me? The snorting sound on the phone disappeared instantly and it became eerily quiet. I ignored Damien and hung up the phone directly, then ran to take clothes to Cashin. After that, Damien bombarded me with phone calls crazily. I didn't answer any of them. He then switched to sending text messages asking me where I lived now and who that man was. I blocked him completely. Cashin saw the text messages on my phone. I was a bit worried that he would be angry at first. However, the man just hugged me onto his lap, rubbed his handsome nose against my face, and our breaths intertwined. My Serafina is so popular. How could I be angry? I'm just glad that I met you at the right time. Cashin only said 2 sentences, but I felt that I was attracted to him again. After that, we stayed at home for 2 days and 2 nights without going out. 24 On the 3rd day, Cashin drove me to the shop. As soon as I got out of the car, I saw Damien waiting at the door. When Damien saw me and Cashin together, his face changed. Cashin blocked me behind him, blocking Damien's view. I pushed him gently. You go inside first. Some things always need to be made clear. It's annoying if it keeps going like this. Cashin was a bit reluctant. Is there anything that I can't hear? Finally, unable to resist my insistence, he had to compromise. All right, but just talk. No funny business. I was speechless. Besides him, who would play tricks on me when I'm talking? After Cashin left, only Damien and I were left. I don't know if it was my illusion, but I always felt that Damien had lost a lot of weight. So your boyfriend is Cashin? I nodded. Damien smiled self-deprecatingly. In that case, did I play matchmaker for you too? I didn't answer. Strictly speaking, it was indeed like this. So what do you want from me? Damien stepped forward to grab my hand, but I took a few steps back and dodged. His hand was suspended in midair and finally clenched into a fist. The man's eyes were slightly red. Serafina, I admit that I've liked you for a long time. Come back. I'll cancel my engagement with Ariadne and make you my wife. You should also break up with Cashin. Let's just forget all the past and start over. Hearing this, I just found it ridiculous. Damien, do you think it's possible? Why not? Dare you say that you've never liked me? I didn't deny it. I did have a crush on him when I was young, but that bit of affection had already disappeared completely under his repeated belittling and ridicule. I can allow myself to give for love, but I can't allow myself to be humble for love. Damien's eyes gradually became panicked as he looked at me, as if he finally understood that I was serious about leaving. He began to speak without thinking. So you've fallen in love with someone else so quickly? Is it because Cashin is rich? Don't you think you're too cheap like this? 25 Damien thought these words could hurt me, but he didn't know that I didn't care at all. Why? You men can turn around and like other women, or even have two boats at the same time. Do we women have to be chaste? After being rejected by you, do we have to hide in a corner, be sad and miserable for several years before we can get over it? Otherwise, we're cheap? How ridiculous. So what if I fall in love with another man? At least I'm clean and above board. It's better than you who always want more while having something. I just like that he's handsome and rich. Are only men allowed to like people for their looks? Can't we women do the same? Damien was at a loss. That's not what I meant. What you mean has nothing to do with me. Damien was speechless and closed his eyes. All his thousands of words turned into one sentence. I really have no chance at all, right? Even if I beg you, it won't work? I shook my head. You've long lost your chance. Damien covered his eyes with his hand, and his straight body finally slumped. He lifted his foot and walked towards the shop. I have something to say to Cashin. Don't follow me in. I waited quietly outside. I thought they would come out soon. Unexpectedly, there was suddenly the sound of fighting inside, and it became more and more intense. I immediately ran inside. I saw that Damien's face was bruised and swollen, and Cashin had one foot firmly on his face. Seeing me come in, a look of panic flashed in Cashin's eyes, and he removed his foot from Damien's face. Damien immediately stood up and pushed Cashin. Cashin was pushed to the ground, and his forehead hit the corner of the table and started bleeding. I immediately ran to Cashin's side. Are you okay? Damien panicked when he saw me too. He's faking it. He was the one who beat me just now. I didn't use that much force at all. He fell down by himself. Cashin held my hand and said in a somewhat weak voice, I'm okay. Don't blame him. Damien was furious. It was you who hit the corner of the table by yourself. How dare you frame me here? Are you still a man? Serafina, don't tell me you believe him instead of me? Shut up. Do you think I don't know if he's faking it? I saw you push him with my own eyes just now. Do you still want to lie to me? Damien still wanted to say something, but I didn't look at him anymore. I helped Cashin and prepared to go to the hospital. Looking at Cashin's pitiful appearance, coupled with his slightly pale face due to the injury, I suddenly felt my mouth go dry. When I put the medicine and hot water on the table, Cashin suddenly said, So you like me because of my looks and money? I was a bit embarrassed. I didn't expect that he had heard the conversation between me and Damien. Then the man unbuttoned his shirt and put my hand on his chest muscles. I'll always be rich and good-looking. So can Serafina like me for a lifetime? Looking at Cashin's pitiful appearance, coupled with his slightly pale face due to the injury, I suddenly felt my mouth go dry. Where on earth did this guy learn these tricks? I couldn't help but lean in and kiss him. Silly, I said those things on purpose to annoy Damien. I'll like you no matter what you're like. 27 I heard that Damien and Ariadne broke off their engagement later. Ariadne didn't want to, and they had a big quarrel on the street. Soon, they were photographed by passing friends and sent to the group. Skylar sent it to me. They say that life doesn't have that many audiences, but there are so many cameras. Later, the Ariadne family was so angry that they hired thugs and beat Damien up severely by putting a sack over his head. It seemed that 2 of his ribs were broken, and he's still lying in the hospital now. There's still more trouble between these 2 families. Damien's father was so worried that his hair turned white. One day I accidentally found an album at Cashin's house. It was full of photos of Cashin from childhood to adulthood. When I flipped to the high school period, I saw a tall and fat guy. He looked very familiar. It was actually Cashin from the class next to mine in high school. Cashin smiled a bit shyly when he knew that I had found out. It turned out that he had recognized me long ago, but I had never recognized him. I couldn't be blamed. He was really different from how he was in high school. Back then, he was tall and fat, and many classmates were afraid of him and didn't dare to make friends with him. It was I who found him sitting alone in the corner and took the initiative to talk to him. At that time, I was also troubled by my figure, so I hoped to offer him some support. I told him, no one can be liked by everyone. Since that's the case, why not be yourself and wait for like-minded people? If one day you really want to change, it must be to make yourself happy, not to please others. You're so strong. You always help the teacher move things. When the classmates in the class were extorted protection fees by hooligans, it was you who scared the hooligans away. These are all your advantages. Because of my comfort, Cashin began to like himself and made up his mind to lose weight. Not for anything else, but just to become a better version of himself and show up in front of me. The man hugged me into his arms. Even if you know my true self, I won't let you return me. Then he bent down and kissed my lips. I smiled and put my arms around his neck, responding to his kiss. What I got in return was a deeper invasion from him. It's so nice. The person I once enlightened also enlightened me with light when I was in a difficult situation.